Deep in the frozen heart of the Siberian wilderness, where the land stretches into an endless expanse of snow-draped pines and shadowed secrets, I stumbled upon a gateway to a realm beyond human comprehension, a portal that tore the fabric of reality itself. I am James Walker, a survivalist forged by a decade of facing Earth's harshest conditions. My YouTube channel a testament to resilience against blizzards, predators, and floods, a chronicle of survival that has taught thousands to endure the unendurable. Last spring, an email from a mysterious Russian businessman, Mikhail Petrov, lured me with a promise of $500,000 to test prototype survival gear in a remote eastern Russian wilderness. An offer cloaked in shadows, its details as elusive as the Siberian winds. What began as a lucrative opportunity spiraled into a descent into an alien dimension, where glowing forests pulsed with an eerie life, monstrous predators hunted with a primal intelligence, and the skeletal remains of previous test subjects revealed a chilling truth. I was not evaluating equipment. I was the experiment, a pawn in a sinister game orchestrated by a man whose ambition knew no moral bounds. This is no mere survival tale to be whispered around a campfire and forgotten with the dawn. It is a documentary of dread, meticulously woven with the threads of tangible evidence. A metal disc that birthed a portal of swirling blue light, a scientist's journal etched with the despair of a doomed expedition, wrist devices humming with alien technology that defied earthly logic, and the haunting silence of a world not meant for human eyes. A realm where the air itself seemed to whisper of ancient, unfathomable forces. Step into the abyss with me as we unravel the layers of this nightmare, where the Siberian wilds conceal a tear in reality. The air grows thick with the breath of the unknown, and the echoes of 16 lost souls demand justice against the man who sent them to their deaths. Through vivid, bone-chilling detail that paints the scene in strokes of shadow and frost, psychological terror that gnaws at the edges of sanity, environmental resonance that binds the land to the supernatural, and an unflinching gaze into the otherworldly, this narrative invites you to feel the cold grip of the alien forest against your skin, to question the fragile limits of survival in the face of the unknown, and to confront the sinister ambition that sent me, and others, into the void, legacy that lingers like a frostbitten scar on the soul. The hum of my laptop filled the quiet of my cluttered office, a small room in my modest home that had become a sanctuary of sorts, its walls lined with topographic maps pinned haphazardly, their edges curling with age, and shelves groaning under the weight of survival gear. Coiled ropes, a battered compass, a knife with a handle worn smooth by years of use. The air carried the faint scent of pine and earth, remnants of my last expedition, a lingering reminder of the wild places that had shaped me. I sat at my desk, a scarred wooden slab littered with empty coffee mugs and crumpled notes, sifting through another batch of emails that had accumulated during my brief hiatus. Sponsorship requests clogged my inbox, a familiar nuisance for a YouTube channel of my stature, one that had grown over a decade of documenting my battles against nature's most unforgiving elements. Blizzards that blinded, predators that stalked, and floods that swallowed the unprepared. The offers were predictable. Energy drinks with a metallic tang that reminded me of battery acid, their artificial sweetness a poor substitute for real sustenance in the wild. Tactical gear that promised durability but unraveled after a single trek through rugged terrain, its stitching giving way under the strain of reality. I deleted them with a practiced rhythm, my fingers hovering over the keys, a reflex honed by years of filtering noise from Signal, when a subject line caught my eye. Private expedition opportunity, $500,000. Spam, I thought immediately, my cynicism a shield forged by countless scams and empty promises, a survival instinct as sharp as any blade I carried into the wilderness. I nearly dismissed it without a glance, my thumb brushing the delete key, but something, a flicker of curiosity, a whisper of possibility, stayed my hand, as if the email itself had reached through the screen to grip me. The email was curt, professional, a stark contrast to the usual clutter of exclamation points and emojis that marked most spam. A Russian businessman named Mikhail Petrov sought my expertise for a week-long film project in Russia, offering $500,000 upfront with the potential for another $500,000 upon satisfactory completion. No details emerged about the filming location or purpose, a void that gnawed at the edges of my mind like a predator circling in the dark. I read it twice, then a third time, the words imprinting themselves like a riddle carved into stone, each pass deepening the unease that coiled in my gut. The sum was staggering. More than 2 years of brand deals and video revenue combined. A fortune that could erase the mortgage on my modest home, secure a retirement I'd never dared dream of amidst the constant hustle for sponsorships, and grant me the freedom to choose projects that spoke to my soul rather than pandering to the demands of sponsors whose products I often loathed. Too good to be true, a phrase that echoed like a warning bell in the recesses of my mind. A lesson learned through years of navigating the fine line between opportunity and danger. Yet, the promise of financial liberation tugged at me. A siren song wrapped in the elegance of cold, hard numbers, whispering of a life unburdened by the constant grind that had defined my career. I turned to Google, my fingers dancing across the keys with an urgency born of suspicion, searching for Mikhail Petrov. The results were sparse, a thin trail of breadcrumbs in the vast digital forest. A handful of mentions in obscure tech investment articles, their language dry and impersonal, noting his involvement in ventures I couldn't pronounce. A blurry conference photo from Dubai, his face a smudge of pixels amidst a sea of suits, unremarkable save for the intensity of his posture. There was no social media trace, no Wikipedia page, nothing to anchor him in the world I knew. A man rich enough to vanish from the digital realm, a phantom with resources beyond imagination. His invisibility a testament to power that operated in shadows I couldn't penetrate. Against my better judgment, I replied, requesting more information, expecting silence, a void as empty as the Siberian tundra I imagined. Within 20 minutes, a response arrived, its promptness unsettling, as if Petrov had been waiting, poised like a hunter. He would be in Moscow next week, proposing a meeting at the Metropole Hotel to discuss details in person. Attached were business-class flight details and confirmation of a reserved suite in my name. All I needed was to say yes, a single word that felt like a leap into an abyss. I leaned back in my chair, the monitor's pale glow casting shadows across my face, illuminating the lines etched by years of exposure to sun and wind. A decade of careful planning and risk assessment flashed before me. Every expedition a calculated dance with danger, every video a lesson in preparation, every survival a triumph of foresight over chaos. This offer defied every rational safety check, its vagueness a red flag that screamed retreat, a siren song wrapped in elegance that threatened to drown me. Yet, my fingers moved of their own accord, typing, "I'll be there anyway." A decision that felt like stepping off a cliff into a void where the ground might never appear. The Metropole Hotel loomed like a palace of polished marble and crystal chandeliers, its grandeur a world apart from the rugged existence I knew, a place where every surface gleamed with a wealth I could scarcely comprehend. I arrived in my cleanest jeans and a sweater without holes, the fabric soft but fraying at the edges, a stark contrast to the opulence that surrounded me. The concierge, a man in a tailored suit with a smile as polished as the marble floors, directed me with a nod to a private dining room on the second floor. His demeanor a silent judgment of my attire, as if I were a stray leaf blown into a pristine garden. I climbed the grand staircase, each step echoing in the cavernous hall, the chandeliers above casting prisms of light that danced like specters on the walls. I knocked twice on the heavy wooden door, the sound reverberating in the stillness, a hollow note that seemed to linger, and entered. Mikhail Petrov sat alone at a table that could seat 12, a man in his 50s with gray at his temples, clad in a suit that likely outvalued my car, its fabric a deep charcoal that absorbed the light. He didn't rise as I approached, his posture rigid, a king on a throne of his own making. "Mr. Walker," he said, gesturing to the chair opposite, his voice smooth with a faint accent, a clipped precision that hinted at years of command. I sat, the chair's leather creaking softly beneath me, and a waiter materialized from nowhere, pouring water from a crystal pitcher with a grace that felt rehearsed, then vanishing as silently as he'd appeared. Petrov's eyes, cold and unreadable, studied me with an intensity that made my skin prickle, as if he were peeling back the layers of my resolve to see what lay beneath. "I've watched many of your videos," he said, his English flawless, the accent a subtle undercurrent, a whisper of his origins. Your Alaskan survival series was particularly impressive. A compliment that felt like a probe, a test of my reaction. Thanks, I replied, my tone guarded. The word clipped as I met his gaze, refusing to be disarmed by flattery. Now, maybe you can tell me why I'm here. His smile didn't reach his eyes. A mask of courtesy that hid something colder, something predatory. Direct. Good. I appreciate that quality, he said, flattening his hands on the table. A gesture of control, the movement deliberate, as if he were anchoring himself against some unseen force. Petrov leaned forward slightly, his fingers splaying on the polished wood, each nail manicured to perfection. A detail that stood in stark contrast to my own hands, scarred and calloused from years in the wild. My company has developed prototype survival gear very advanced, he began, his voice steady, each word chosen with care, as if he were laying a trap. We need someone with your expertise to test it under authentic conditions. My interest peaked despite the unease that coiled tighter in my gut, a serpent stirring from slumber. What kind of gear? I asked, leaning forward, the table a barrier between us, its surface reflecting the dim light of the chandelier above, a distorted mirror of our faces. A comprehensive system, he elaborated, communication devices, shelter components, navigation tools. The entire package weighs less than 5 kilograms. 5 kilos for a complete survival setup was revolutionary if functional, a weight I could carry without strain, a promise of innovation that could change the game for survivalists like me, who often bore the burden of heavy packs in unforgiving terrain. The idea intrigued me, a spark of professional curiosity igniting amidst the shadows of suspicion, but the vagueness of his pitch kept me on edge, a reminder of the abyss I was teetering toward. Where would this test happen? I pressed, my voice steady but laced with the weight of my growing doubts. A remote area in eastern Russia, he said, sipping his water with a deliberate slowness, the crystal catching the light, casting fleeting rainbows on the table. Uninhabited, challenging terrain. We would transport you, provide the equipment, and extract you after 7 days. The answer was a brushstroke of ambiguity, broad and undefined, leaving more questions than answers, the kind of response that set my instincts alight with warning. I shifted in my seat, the leather creaking again, a sound that seemed to echo the tension in the room, the air growing heavier with each word unspoken. And you're willing to pay $500,000 for this? I challenged, my eyes narrowing, searching his face for a crack in his composure, a tell that might betray his true intent. He slid his phone across the table with a smoothness that belied the weight of the gesture. A banking app displayed on the screen, showing a completed transaction. $250,000 already transferred to my account, the numbers glowing like a beacon in the dim light, a tangible proof of his seriousness. Consider it a gesture of good faith, he said, his voice calm, but there was a hardness beneath it, a steel that suggested this was no mere gesture, but a hook baited with wealth. I checked my phone, my fingers trembling slightly as I navigated to my banking app, the notification confirming the deposit, a sum that shifted the ground beneath me, a seismic change in my reality. The money was real, a fortune that could rewrite my future, but its presence only deepened the unease, a reminder that nothing this lucrative came without a cost. Why me? I asked, struggling to steady my voice, the words a lifeline as I clung to reason amidst the allure of the offer. There are military experts with advanced training, people with more technical skills. Petrov paused, his gaze piercing, as if he were weighing my worth in that moment. His silence a blade held to my throat. Your communication skills, your ability to explain technical concepts to your audience, and yes, your social media presence, he finally said, his voice a low rumble, each word a stone dropped into still water, sending ripples of doubt through me. If our equipment performs well in your hands, the marketing value is considerable. The explanation rang hollow, a puzzle piece that didn't fit the jagged edges of my suspicion. No company pays this much for gear testing, not even for the publicity of a YouTube channel like mine, with its modest but dedicated following of survival enthusiasts. The money in my account burned like a beacon, a temptation that threatened to blind me to the red flags waving in the periphery of my vision. "What's the catch, Mr. Petrov?" I demanded, my tone hardening, the question a lifeline as I sought to anchor myself against the tide of his offer. His expression remained impassive, a mask carved from ice, his eyes unblinking as they held mine. "The location must remain confidential," he said, each word measured, a contract in itself. "You cannot bring your own equipment, only what we provide, and you must agree to our editing approval before publishing any content about the experience." Red flags flared like signal fires in the dark. Confidentiality that shrouded the mission in secrecy, restricted gear that stripped me of my trusted tools, editorial control that gagged my voice, each condition a shackle disguised as a term of agreement. The money burned brighter in my mind, a promise of security I'd never known, a life where I could create without the constant pressure of financial survival. But the cost loomed larger, a shadow that stretched across the table, its edges undefined but menacing. "I need to think about it," I said, buying time, my voice steady but my mind racing. A storm of conflicting impulses, logic screaming retreat, ambition urging me forward, the weight of the decision pressing against my chest like a physical force. Petrov signaled with a subtle gesture, and a man entered, his presence a sudden intrusion, carrying a folder as if it were a sacred relic. "The contract is here for your review," Petrov said, his tone unchanged, a calm that belied the stakes. "Take until tomorrow morning." He stood, extending a hand, and I shook it, his grip cold and dry, like pressing against stone, a contact that left me chilled, as if I'd touched something not entirely human. Back in my suite, a room of opulent excess with its silk drapes and gilded fixtures, I pored over the contract thrice, its legal language dense yet clear, the confidentiality clauses strict but plausible for prototype testing, each paragraph a thread in a web I could feel tightening around me. I paced the room until midnight, the plush carpet muffling my steps, the city lights of Moscow glittering beyond the window like a constellation of false stars, weighing the smart move, walking away from too many unknowns, too many restrictions, against the life-changing security the money offered, a freedom I'd never tasted in a career built on grit and sacrifice. At 1 a.m., I set up my camera on the desk, its lens a silent witness, and hit record, creating a failsafe. "My name is James Walker," I said, my voice steady despite the hour. "It's currently 1:07 a.m. on March 10th. I'm in Moscow at the Metropole Hotel." I explained the offer, described Petrov, detailed the contract terms, my words a lifeline to the world beyond this gilded cage. "If you're watching this, it means I didn't deactivate the scheduled upload. If I don't enter my password in 8 days, this video goes public. If that happens, something went wrong." I saved the file to my private cloud, uploaded it with a trembling hand, scheduled its release, and signed the contract, the pen's scratch a sound of finality, a surrender to the pull of the unknown, a decision that felt like a pact with forces I couldn't yet name. Morning arrived with gray light filtering through the suite's expensive curtains, their silk a soft contrast to the storm in my mind, the city outside waking with a muted hum that felt distant, as if I were already slipping beyond its reach. I packed my meager belongings, a small duffel with a change of clothes, a notebook, a few essentials, each item a tether to the life I knew, their weight a comfort against the uncertainty ahead. I descended to the lobby, the grandeur of the metropole now a hollow shell, its beauty a mask for the dread that had taken root in my chest. Petrov waited with a tall man of military bearing, his posture rigid, watchful eyes scanning the room with a precision that spoke of training, his presence a silent threat. "You've made a wise decision, Mr. Walker," Petrov said, taking the signed contract with a nod, his voice a smooth blade, cutting through the last of my resistance. "Andrei will assist with travel arrangements." I followed them to a waiting car, a sleek black vehicle that gleamed like a predator in the early light, the rational part of my brain screaming retreat, a chorus of warnings I'd ignored too many times in my career. But my confidence, forged in blizzards that howled like wolves, against predators whose eyes glowed in the dark, through floods that roared with the fury of gods, silenced it, a defiance born of survival, a belief that I could endure whatever lay ahead. As we drove from the hotel, the streets of Moscow fading into a blur of gray and glass, The destination remained a mystery, the strangest job of my career unfolding like a shadow on the horizon, its edges undefined but growing darker with each passing mile. The stairs to Petrov's private jet caught the early morning light, a gleaming path into uncertainty. Each step a polished steel rung that seemed to shimmer with a promise of escape or entrapment. I climbed them with a steady gait, my boots scuffing softly against the metal, the air crisp with the bite of Moscow's spring dawn, the city's skyline a fading memory as I crossed the threshold. No flight attendant greeted me, a stark absence that heightened the sense of isolation. Only Andrei stood rigid at the entrance, his posture unyielding, a soldier's discipline etched into every line of his frame. He pointed to a leather seat without a word, his eyes, cold, gray, and ceaselessly vigilant, tracking my every move, a silent warning that I was under scrutiny, a specimen in a glass cage. I stowed my small duffel in the overhead compartment, its canvas worn from years of use, a familiar weight that grounded me amidst the alien luxury of the jet's interior. The cabin smelled of polished wood and expensive leather, a scent that spoke of wealth and power, a world far removed from the muddy trails and rain-soaked campsites I called home. For seats faced a glossy table, their leather a deep burgundy that seemed to absorb the light, while single seats receded toward the back, each one a solitary throne in this airborne palace. Petrov sat across from me, typing on a laptop with a focus that excluded me, his fingers moving with a precision that mirrored his speech, each keystroke a note in a symphony I couldn't hear. "Coffee, Mr. Walker?" he asked without looking up, his voice a low hum, a formality that felt hollow. "Black, if you have it," I replied, my tone clipped, the request a small act of defiance, a refusal to be wholly at his mercy. Andrei placed a cup before me, its porcelain fine enough to be a museum piece, the coffee's aroma a sharp contrast to the sterile luxury of the cabin, then sat where he could monitor both the cabin and me, his gaze roving like a hawk's, always moving, always assessing, his military training evident in the way he held himself, a coiled spring ready to strike. "How long is the flight?" I asked after several minutes of silence, the jet's engines a steady drone that vibrated through the cabin, a reminder of the distance growing between me and the world I knew. "Long enough," Petrov replied, his focus still on his screen, the answer a non-answer, a deliberate evasion that deepened the unease in my gut. "I suggest you rest. The testing location requires physical endurance." That was his last word for hours, a dismissal that left me isolated in my thoughts, the jet slicing eastward over an endless Russian landscape, its expanse a patchwork of snow and forest that stretched to the horizon, a wilderness as vast and unknowable as the man before me. I switched between staring out the window, the view a monotonous blur of white and green, and closing my eyes, the darkness behind my lids a refuge from the tension that thickened the air. But true rest eluded me, trust a luxury I couldn't afford at 30,000 feet with two near strangers whose intentions remained as opaque as the clouds below. We landed at a strip barely qualifying as an airfield, a paved runway ringed by dense pine forest, the trees towering like sentinels, their needles a dark green that seemed to swallow the weak light, a solitary hangar its only structure, its corrugated metal rusted at the edges, a relic of a forgotten purpose. There was no terminal, no other planes, no signs to anchor my location, just the runway and the forest, a void that stretched into the unknown, its silence a weight that pressed against my ears. A heavy-duty SUV waited beside the hangar, its black exterior gleaming despite the dust that coated its tires, a vehicle built for the kind of terrain that broke lesser machines. Andrei loaded our bags with a methodical efficiency, his movements precise, while Petrov made a brief call, his voice low, the words in Russian a rapid staccato I couldn't decipher, a conversation that excluded me as thoroughly as the landscape did. I checked my phone, the screen a blank slate, no service, a expected but nerve-wracking void, a reminder of how far I'd strayed from the safety of civilization, from the network of contacts and resources that had always been my lifeline. "Your phone won't work here," Petrov noted, his tone matter-of-fact as if he'd read my thoughts, his eyes flicking to me for the first time since we'd boarded, a brief acknowledgement that felt like a warning. "The equipment we're testing includes communication devices. Outside technology would contaminate the results." The explanation was logical, yet it deepened the isolation, stripping me of another layer of control, another tether to the world I'd left behind. I pocketed my useless device, its weight a dead thing in my hand, and climbed into the SUV's back seat. The leather cool against my skin, Andrei driving with Petrov beside him, the dashboard clock reading 2:17 p.m. Though time zones eluded me, the concept of time itself beginning to feel as slippery as the ice I imagined beneath the snow outside. The drive stretched for hours, a journey into the heart of the wilderness. The roads deteriorating with each mile, a descent into a primal world where man's presence felt like an intrusion. The pavement gave way to rough gravel, the stones crunching beneath the tires like bones, each jolt a reminder of the terrain's hostility. Then to faint tracks through thickening forest, the path barely visible, a ghost of a trail that seemed to dissolve into the undergrowth. Pines gave way to massive trunks that blocked the sky, their bark rough and ancient, their branches a dense canopy that filtered the light into a dim, gray-green haze, the air growing colder as we ascended, the horizon lost to the trees, a claustrophobic embrace that made the world feel smaller, more menacing. Andrei drove with unerring certainty, a man who tread this path before, his hands steady on the wheel, his eyes fixed ahead, never hesitating at a turn. His silence a wall that kept me at a distance, a reminder that I was an outsider in this operation, a tool to be used and discarded. The forest seemed to close in around us, its shadows lengthening as the day waned. The air thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, a perfume of the wild that both invigorated and unnerved me, a reminder of the countless expeditions where nature had been both ally and adversary. Darkness fell with a swiftness that felt predatory, the last rays of sunlight swallowed by the trees, leaving only the SUV's headlights to pierce the void, twin beams that illuminated the path but cast the surrounding forest into deeper shadow, a blackness that seemed alive, watching, waiting. We reached a hunting lodge as the first stars began to prick the sky, its dark wood and steep roof built for snow, sturdy but unadorned, a structure that spoke of function over form, its silhouette a stark contrast to the opulence of the metropole. Smoke curled from a stone chimney, a thin thread of gray against the night, a sign of life in this desolate place, though the warmth it promised felt distant, unattainable. "Home for tonight," Petrov said, stepping out, his breath clouding in the frigid air, his voice a low rumble that carried the weight of command. "Tomorrow your real work begins." Inside, the lodge mirrored its exterior, functional, with heavy wooden furniture that bore the scars of use, mounted animal heads staring blankly from the walls, their glass eyes reflecting the flickering light of the fireplace, a kitchen stocked with basics, canned goods, dried meat, a loaf of black bread. Its shelves a testament to survival rather than comfort. An older man, his face lined with years, nodded to Petrov from beside the fireplace, his presence a fleeting shadow, then vanished through a side door without a word, a ghost in this house of secrets. The fire's warmth barely reached the room's corners, the chill lingering like an unwelcome guest, a reminder of the cold that waited outside, a cold that could kill as surely as any predator. "Your quarters are the second door on the right," Petrov said, his tone unchanged, a directive rather than an invitation. "Dinner in 1 hour. Andrei will brief you afterward." My room was a Spartan cell, a narrow bed with a thin mattress, a wooden chair that creaked under my weight, a small lamp on a nightstand, its weak bulb casting a sickly yellow glow, the window framing darkness and trees, their branches like skeletal fingers against the glass. I sat on the bed, bouncing slightly to test the mattress, its firmness a discomfort I'd endured before, a reminder of nights spent on rocky ground or frozen tundra. But here, in this lodge, it felt more ominous, a prelude to the trials ahead. Dinner, venison stew, its rich aroma a fleeting comfort, black bread that tore with a satisfying crust, no alcohol to dull the senses. Passed in silence, Petrov and Andrei exchanging rapid Russian, their voices a low murmur I couldn't decipher, the older man absent, his absence a question mark that hung in the air. Afterward, Andrei led me to the main room, where a worn green backpack with a Venture Beyond patch sat on the table. Its canvas faded, its stitching tight, a piece of gear that looked ordinary but carried the weight of Petrov's promises. "This is the equipment?" I asked, skepticism lacing my voice, my fingers brushing the rough fabric, expecting more for the price I was being paid. Andrei nodded, his face a mask of indifference. Mr. Petrov says you should familiarize yourself tonight. I unzipped it, the sound a sharp rasp in the quiet room. Empty, save a metal disc the size of a poker chip in a small inner pocket. Its surface smooth, reflecting the firelight with a dull gleam. The material felt odd, light yet thick, the seams fused without visible thread, as if the fabric had been melded by some unknown process. The zippers gliding silently, their smoothness a perfection I'd never encountered in even the most expensive gear. What exactly am I testing? I pressed, my voice sharper, the emptiness of the pack a mockery of the $500,000 promise. Mr. Petrov will explain in the morning, Andrei replied, his tone flat, his departure a dismissal as he headed for the door. We leave at 4 a.m. Sleep now. Rest eluded me, the bed unyielding, the room's silence a stark contrast to Moscow's constant hum, a void that amplified the thoughts circling in my mind. The empty backpack, the $500,000, the secrecy that cloaked this expedition like a shroud, each piece a puzzle I couldn't solve. A knock at 3:30 a.m. roused me. The lodge cold, the fire reduced to embers, its glow a faint pulse in the darkness. I dressed in trusted layers, thermal base, wool sweater, waterproof shell, each piece of familiar armor, a shield against the unknown, and joined breakfast of oatmeal, dried fruit, and strong coffee. The bitter brew a lifeline as I fueled for the trials ahead. Petrov and Andrei, clad for serious work, entered as I finished, their presence a storm cloud on the horizon. Ready, Mr. Walker? Petrov asked, his voice a challenge. As I'll ever be, I replied, shouldering the unnaturally light pack, its weight a mystery that pressed against my back, a harbinger of the abyss I was about to enter. We left in darkness, headlamps piercing the thick forest, their beams a frail defense against the night, Andrei leading with purpose, his strides long and sure, Petrov behind, me last, silence our companion, a heavy cloak that stifled any attempt at connection. The terrain grew rugged as dawn broke, the first light filtering through the canopy in weak, gray shafts, illuminating rocks that jutted from the earth like the bones of the land, their surfaces slick with frost, each step a test of balance and will. Andrei veered from obvious paths with deliberate confusion, his movements a calculated dance to obscure our route, a tactic I recognized from my own training, how to lose a pursuer, how to ensure no one could follow. By mid-morning, my experience discerned a pattern, not random but a labyrinthine approach to a specific destination, a route designed to prevent return without a guide, a realization that sent a chill down my spine, colder than the air that bit at my exposed skin. After 6 hours, we reached a clearing, artificial, its creation evident in the felled trees that formed a 30-foot circle, their stumps removed, the ground flat and dotted with snow patches, a space carved from the wilderness with a purpose I couldn't yet fathom. Petrov checked his watch, the movement precise, a ritual of control. This is where you'll conduct the test, he said, his voice a low rumble, a proclamation that felt like a sentence. And what exactly am I testing? I repeated, my tone flat, the question a lifeline as I sought clarity amidst the growing dread. Survival, Mr. Walker, he replied, gesturing to the backpack with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. A cold, empty expression that chilled me more than the frost beneath my boots. That equipment is designed for extreme conditions. You're the perfect subject. It's empty, I said, my voice a flat accusation, the words a challenge to his facade. His smile widened, a predator's grin. Is it? Perhaps you haven't activated it correctly. He handed me a satellite phone, its compact design, military grade, a tool for emergencies in a place where help felt impossibly far. One number for genuine emergencies. Andrei will return in 7 days. 7 days? Here. I scanned the nondescript space, its emptiness a mirror to the void in Petrov's explanations, the clearing offering nothing. No shelter, no water, no signs of life. What's special about this location? Everything you need is in that pack, Petrov evaded, his voice a smooth dismissal, nodding to Andrei as they turned to leave, their departure a closing door. Wait, I called, desperation creeping into my voice. Water sources? Game trails? Orientation? Petrov paused, his back to me, a silhouette against the trees. You're a survival expert, Mr. Walker. This is what I'm paying you for. Their footsteps faded, swallowed by the forest, leaving me alone with a phone and an empty pack. The temperature dropping as clouds obscured the weak sun, a shroud that mirrored the uncertainty closing in around me. The clearing offered little shelter, its flat expanse a stark contrast to the dense forest that encircled it. The trees standing like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with snow that glinted in the dim light, a deceptive beauty that masked the hostility of this place. There was no water source visible, no game trails to hint at life, just the trees, the brush, and a silence that pressed against my ears, a void that seemed to hum with an unspoken menace, as if the wilderness itself were holding its breath, waiting for me to make a mistake. I pulled out my survival knife, the one item I'd insisted on bringing, its blade sharp and familiar, a trusted companion in countless expeditions, and marked a tree at the edge of the clearing, carving a small notch into the bark, a breadcrumb in a forest that seemed eager to erase my presence. I circled the area, noting landmarks. A lightning-struck pine with a blackened scar, a boulder half buried in the earth, its surface slick with frost, each a mental anchor in a landscape designed to disorient, confirming the deliberate confusion of our approach. A route that doubled back, circled, and cut through the forest in a way that ensured I couldn't retrace my steps without a guide. A realization that deepened the isolation, a reminder that I was exactly where Petrov wanted me to be. Pawn in a game whose rules I didn't understand. The backpack rested on a fallen log, its green canvas faded but sturdy, ordinary in appearance save for the venture beyond patch sewn above the main pocket. A slogan that now felt like a taunt, a promise of exploration that masked a darker intent. I lifted it, its weight heavier than expected, the surface smooth, reflecting the fading sunlight with a dull gleam, a piece of gear that promised revolution. 5 kilos for a complete survival system, but delivered emptiness, a mockery of the $500,000 offer that had lured me here. The sun sank fast, its descent a swift plunge toward darkness, a reminder of the harsh reality of these northern latitudes, where daylight was a fleeting guest and night a merciless host. Temperatures plummeted, the air biting at my exposed skin, each breath a cloud that hung in the still air, a warning of the cold that could kill as surely as starvation or dehydration. I gathered firewood from the edge of the clearing, marking each tree I passed with my knife, the damp forest floor yielding dry branches beneath the thicker pines, their needles a carpet that muffled my steps, the scent of resin and earth a familiar comfort in this alien place. By the time I built a small fire pit, the shadows cloaked the clearing, a darkness that seemed to seep from the trees themselves, the cold sinking into my bones, a relentless force that tested my resolve. Then I felt it, a warmth against my thigh where I'd pocketed the metal disc, a sensation that wasn't body heat but something else, something unnatural, a pulse that seemed to sync with my heartbeat, a rhythm that felt alive, sentient. I pulled it out, my fingers trembling not from the cold but from a growing dread, the disc's edges glowing a faint blue, pulsing with light like a living thing, each beat a whisper of something beyond my understanding. What the hell? I muttered, my voice a thread in the silence, the disc warming in my palm, its heat a contrast to the frigid air, a warmth that felt wrong, alien. The blue light surged upward, a beam that defied gravity, forming a 3-foot sphere of spinning energy, floating a few inches above the forest floor, its surface a swirling vortex of blue that seemed to hum with a low, resonant frequency, a sound that vibrated in my chest, a call from the abyss. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over the log, my heart pounding as I fumbled for my phone, its camera a lifeline to document the impossible. Day 1 in the test location, I narrated, my voice trembling, the words a tether to reality as I filmed the glowing orb, its light casting eerie shadows on the trees, transforming the clearing into a stage for the supernatural. Given an empty backpack with a device producing this effect, the orb spun faster, its center clearing like a window wiped clean, revealing a scene that stole the breath from my lungs. Trees, but not the pines and firs of Siberia, massive trunks with ridged bark that glowed faintly, a purple-hued light that bathed the scene in an otherworldly glow, a forest that looked wrong, its proportions alien, its colors unnatural, a place that defied every rule of the natural world I knew. I circled the orb, my boots crunching on the frozen ground, the view shifting as I moved, revealing different angles of the same strange forest, its trees towering beyond the reach of the light, their branches heavy with leaves that seemed to shimmer with an internal luminescence, a bioluminescence that spoke of a world untouched by human hands. The device appears to be projecting a window to another location, I said to the camera, my voice a whisper, the word window inadequate for the reality before me, a reality that felt like a violation of the laws of physics, a tear in the fabric of the world. I picked up a stick, its surface rough against my palm, and cautiously approached, expecting resistance, a barrier to confirm this was a projection, a trick of light. The stick passed through the edge of the orb, vanishing as if swallowed, visible only on the other side in that strange forest, its tip untouched, unchanged. I pulled it back, the stick reappearing intact, and tried again, pushing it further, then retrieving it, the result the same. A seamless transition between worlds, a portal that defied logic. It seems to be some kind of portal, I whispered, the word absurd yet undeniable, a concept torn from science fiction, a fantasy made real in the frozen heart of Siberia, a truth that sent a shiver down my spine, colder than the air that surrounded me. The temperature continued to drop, my breath clouding in front of me, the sky darkening to a deep blue, stars beginning to prick through the clouds, their light cold and distant, a reminder of how far I was from help, from safety. At 6 p.m., with Andre 7 days away, I faced 3 options, each a gamble with my life. Stay here, build a shelter in the dark, conserve my scant supplies, and endure the cold that could kill me in a single night. Call the emergency number on the satellite phone, admitting failure and losing the $500,000, a choice that felt like surrender, a betrayal of the resilience that had defined my career. Or step through the portal, face the unknown dangers of that alien forest, a world that promised warmth but held terrors I couldn't predict, a leap into the abyss with no guarantee of return. The cold and the wet wood, which refused to catch fire despite my efforts, sealed my choice. The clearing's hostility a death sentence if I stayed. I'm not a test subject, I told my recording phone. The words a declaration, a defiance against Petrov's game, a reclaiming of my agency in the face of the unknown. I've survived the Amazon, the Arctic, the Outback. I'll survive this. I took a deep breath, the air sharp in my lungs, and stepped into the blue light, the world swirling around me, colors bleeding into a chaotic spiral, my stomach lurching, my ears popping with a painful intensity. Then stillness, a sudden, jarring calm that left me standing in the alien forest, the portal flickering once behind me before vanishing. Its absence a final severing of my connection to Earth, a door slammed shut on the world I knew. I stood surrounded by towering trees, their bark glowing with faint lines of bluish light, an internal luminescence that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat, a living forest that watched me with unseen eyes. The air was thick, humid, smelling of unfamiliar plants, a scent that was both floral and metallic, a perfume of the alien that coated my throat with each breath. Each inhale labored against the dense atmosphere, my boots sinking into spongy soil that yielded beneath my weight, a texture like peat moss but alive, reforming as I stepped away, a ground that seemed to breathe, to adapt, to reject my presence. My phone's flashlight swept the scene, its beam of frail defense against the darkness that pressed in, revealing trees that soared beyond its reach, their trunks wider than cars, their branches heavy with massive leaves that shimmered with a bioluminescent glow, a canopy that blocked the sky save for gaps that revealed a sight that stopped my heart. 2 moons, one pale yellow, the other bluish, hanging in a sky of deep indigo, their light casting a surreal glow on the forest below, a confirmation of the impossible. Not in Russia anymore, I whispered, the realization a hammer blow, a truth that shattered every explanation I'd clung to. Hallucinations, a fake environment, drugs, all crumbled under the moon's gaze, their presence a proof that this was no earthly forest, that I had crossed into another dimension, a world where the rules of survival were rewritten by forces I couldn't comprehend. Survival took precedence, a mantra that had guided me through every expedition, a focus that pushed back the panic threatening to overwhelm me. The weather was bearable, like early fall, the humidity a damp weight but not unbearable, the plants glowing faintly, their light enough to conserve my phone's battery, a small mercy in this alien realm. I bent to examine the soil, rubbing it between my fingers, its texture crumbling like peat moss but reforming, a living substance that seemed to pulse with intent, a ground that rejected the laws of Earth. The flora was unlike anything I knew. Spiral ferns that curled inward at my touch, vines that seemed to breathe, their surfaces shimmering with a faint glow, a bioluminescence that spoke of a world evolved in darkness, a world where light was a product of life itself. A rustle to my left froze me, the sound a sharp intrusion in the stillness, my body tensing as I listened, the noise growing closer, multiple entities moving with purpose. I pressed against a glowing tree, its bark warm against my back, the light within it pulsing faster, as if it sensed my fear, my breath steady but shallow. A technique honed through years of facing danger, a control that kept panic at bay. 3 creatures emerged from between the trees, 90 feet away, their forms wolf-like yet wrong, their bodies elongated, legs bent at unnatural angles, long skulls crowned with branching antlers that absorbed the light rather than reflecting it, a darkness that seemed to swallow the glow around them. They moved as a pack, sniffing the ground, making soft clicking sounds to each other, a communication that sent a shiver down my spine, a language of the hunt. One lifted its head, nostrils flaring, black eyes catching the tree's glow like mirrors, locking onto me for 5 agonizing seconds, a frozen moment where time itself seemed to hold its breath. Then the leader turned away, the pack vanishing into the forest, their departure a reprieve, but the memory of those eyes lingered, a promise of pursuit, a reminder that I was prey in this world, a human out of place in a realm that had never known my kind, or had it. I waited 5 full minutes, counting in my head, each second a test of patience, a lesson in survival that had kept me alive through countless threats, until I was certain they were gone. Standing still on the ground wasn't a plan, a realization that spurred me into action, the need for higher ground a priority in a forest where danger could come from any direction. A smaller tree, 50 feet off, offered climbable branches, its trunk narrower than the giants around it, its bark rough but not sharp, a natural ladder in this alien wilderness. I walked toward it, stepping carefully to stay quiet, the glowing plants beneath my feet casting a faint light, their luminescence a guide in the darkness, their movements a subtle recoil as I passed, a reminder of the life that surrounded me, a life that saw me as an intruder. Climbing came easy after years of fieldwork, my hands finding holds with a practiced ease, my legs pushing me upward, the bark yielding slightly under my grip, a texture that felt alive, pulsing with the same glow as the larger trees. 20 feet up, I found a spot where branches met, a natural seat that could hold my weight, my back against the trunk, legs stretched along a branch, a perch that offered a view of the forest below, a vantage point that felt safer, though safety was an illusion in a world where the rules were unknown. The empty backpack felt awkward behind me, its straps digging into my shoulders, a reminder of its uselessness, or so I thought. I took it off, planning to use it as a pillow while I figured out my next move, the fabric cool against my hands, its weight heavier than it should have been for an empty pack. As I adjusted the straps, my fingers brushed a seam that shouldn't have been there, a hidden catch between layers of material, a discovery that sent a jolt through me, a puzzle piece I hadn't seen. I pressed it, feeling for a mechanism, and something clicked, a sound that echoed in the stillness, a trigger that set the backpack into motion. It shook in my hands, a tremor that felt alive, and I nearly dropped it, catching it just in time as the fabric began to change, flowing like liquid into a new shape, pockets appearing where there had been none, the straps pulling in and re-emerging stronger, padded, the pack transforming before my eyes, a metamorphosis that defied logic, a piece of technology that belonged to this world, not mine. When the transformation completed, it weighed several pounds, filled with contents I couldn't yet name, a survival kit that had been hidden until now, a secret revealed by the alien environment, a truth that shifted my understanding of Petrov's mission. Inside the main compartment, I found water purification tablets, their surface shimmering with a weird sheen, unlike any I'd seen on Earth, a promise of sustenance in a world where water might be poison. Another pocket held smaller metal discs, similar to the one that had created the portal, but marked with colored bands, red, blue, green, each one a potential key to survival or destruction, their purpose a mystery I'd have to unravel. From a side pocket that hadn't existed moments before, I pulled a wrist device, a band made of the same material as the backpack, its surface smooth, a flat metal panel where a watch face would be, a piece of tech that felt alive, responsive. I turned it over, looking for buttons or switches, finding none. Its design seamless, a perfection that spoke of advanced engineering, a technology far beyond anything I'd encountered. I slipped it onto my left wrist, the band adjusting with a soft hum, tightening to fit perfectly, as if it had been made for me, a symbiotic connection that felt both comforting and unnerving. The metal face lit up, projecting a holographic display 6 inches above my wrist, symbols I couldn't read scrolling by, then morphing into simple icons, droplets, a thermometer, a compass, readings I couldn't yet decipher, a language of survival translated for my human mind. I tapped the water droplet icon, the display shifting to show a map with flashing blue dots at varying distances from a central point. My location, I realized, a guide to water sources in this alien realm, a lifeline in a world where dehydration could kill as surely as the creatures that hunted me. I tried the thermometer icon next, numbers appearing in the holographic display. 18.3 degrees Celsius ambient temperature, 37.1 degrees Celsius body temperature, 22.6% oxygen content. A reading that explained the thickness of the air, lower than Earth's 21% but breathable, the higher nitrogen making each breath a labor, a reminder of how far I was from home. The next icon resembled a shield, its shape a promise of protection, a hope in this hostile world. When I tapped it, the device emitted a quiet sound, a soft chime that seemed to resonate with the forest itself, and a transparent bubble formed around me, extending 3 feet in all directions, its edges shimmering faintly, a shield that was nearly invisible, a cloak against the dangers that lurked below. A snapping twig caught my attention, the sound a sharp intrusion, my gaze dropping to the forest floor. One of the antlered creatures stood directly beneath my tree, sniffing with its long neck pointed up, its black eyes searching, locking onto my position, a predator that had found its prey. I held perfectly still, barely breathing, my body a statue, my heart a drumbeat in my chest, certain it would see me, that the bubble wouldn't be enough, that I'd be torn from my perch and devoured in this alien forest, my story ending in a place no human would ever find. But after a few moments, the creature turned away, its movements confused, pacing in a circle, sniffing again at the base of the tree, then wandering off into the forest, its departure a reprieve I hadn't dared hope for. The bubble had hidden me, not just visually but masking my scent, a technology that had saved my life, a piece of gear calibrated for this world, not Earth, a revelation that shifted my understanding of Petrov's mission. I wasn't testing equipment. I was the subject, a human guinea pig in an experiment I hadn't agreed to, a truth that chilled me more than the air, a realization that I might not be the first, that others had come before me, their fates written in the behavior of the creatures below, a pack that hunted with a familiarity that suggested they'd tasted human flesh before, that I was the latest in a line of sacrifices to Petrov's ambition, the alien realm and the scientist's legacy. 3 days of relentless flight marked my struggle through the alien forest, a grueling marathon that tested every ounce of my endurance, a journey through a landscape that seemed designed to break me, to reject me, to erase me from its memory. I climbed over fallen tree trunks, their bark glowing with the same bioluminescent light as the standing giants, the wood soft and spongy, as if it were decaying and regenerating in the same breath, a cycle of life that defied Earth's laws. I waded through ankle-deep pools of glowing water, the liquid a faint blue that shimmered with an internal light, its surface undisturbed by ripples, its temperature warm against my skin, a deceptive comfort that hid the alien minerals I knew lurked within, minerals that could poison as easily as nourish. Sleep came in 20-minute bursts, wedged into branches high above the forest floor, my body aching from the strain. The backpack a makeshift pillow, its contents a lifeline I clung to, a reminder of the technology that had kept me alive. A technology one now understood was not meant for Earth, but for this world. A world where I was the intruder, the prey. Food consisted of nutrition bars that had materialized in the backpack after its transformation. Tasteless but filling. Their texture a dense paste that coated my mouth. Their lack of flavor a small price to pay for the energy they provided. A sustenance that kept starvation at bay in a forest where nothing edible grew. Where every plant seemed to recoil from my touch, as if it knew I didn't belong. A cave offered shelter on the third day, its entrance a narrow crack between two rock faces. A dark maw that promised respite from the humid air and the constant threat of the antlered creatures. What I'd come to call deerwolves, a name that captured their predatory grace and alien form. I scraped my shoulders squeezing through, the rock rough against my skin, the pain a sharp reminder of my vulnerability. But the air inside was cooler, easier to breathe, a relief after the thick, humid atmosphere of the forest, a weight that had pressed against my lungs with every step. Day 3. I muttered to my phone as I recorded, the flashlight beam sweeping the cave, its light a frail defense against the darkness that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. A darkness that whispered of secrets I wasn't meant to know. Found what might be decent shelter. First real break since arriving. The cave widened as I moved deeper, its walls smooth, carved by forces I couldn't name, water dripping somewhere in the dark. A steady rhythm that echoed like a heartbeat. A sound that both soothed and unnerved me. A reminder of the life that permeated this world. A life that saw me as a threat, an invader to be expelled. I walked carefully, testing each step, the stone floor clean save for dust. A blank slate that offered no clues, no comfort. The threat of a broken ankle a constant danger with my limited supplies. A mistake that could mean death in a place where help was a universe away. My light caught something shiny 30 feet ahead. A glint of metal that stood out against the natural rock. A sign of human presence in this alien realm. A discovery that sent a jolt through me. A spark of hope and dread intertwined. I approached cautiously, my light revealing a small pile of equipment on the floor. A torn bag, its fabric shredded as if by claws, metal containers dented and empty. Research tools I couldn't name. Their purpose a mystery. Their presence a testament to someone else's journey. Someone else's failure. Then my light found the body, slumped against the cave wall, its head down on its chest. A skeletal figure clad in what had once been hiking gear. Heavy pants, boots, the remnants of a jacket, its fabric tattered, its colors faded to gray, a uniform of survival that had failed its wearer. Most of the flesh was gone, leaving behind bones held together by dried bits of skin. A mummified corpse preserved by the cool, dry air of the cave, a relic of a life ended in despair. Jesus? I whispered, instinctively stepping back, the word a prayer, a curse, a plea for understanding in the face of the unthinkable. Death wasn't new to me. I'd seen bodies on mountain rescues gone wrong, in wilderness accidents where nature claimed its due, even a drowning once, the victim's face bloated and pale, a memory that haunted my dreams. But this was different. A human being who had died alone in a place no human was ever meant to be. A place where the rules of survival were rewritten by forces beyond comprehension. A place where hope was a luxury no one could afford. I forced myself to approach, covering my nose against the stale, musty odor of decay. A scent that clung to the back of my throat. A reminder of mortality in a world that seemed to defy it. The body wasn't fresh, weeks old at minimum, perhaps longer. The cave's conditions slowing the decay, preserving the remains like a museum exhibit, a testament to the passage of time in this alien realm. A patch on the jacket sleeve caught my attention, a circular emblem with Cyrillic lettering and a stylized atom or molecule in the center, a logo that spoke of a Russian research institute, a clue to the man's identity, a hint at the purpose that had brought him here, a purpose that had ended in death. Who were you? I asked the corpse, my voice a whisper, as if it might answer, as if the bones could speak the truth of this place. A truth I feared I already knew. I swept my light across the scattered equipment. Research tools I couldn't name, their surfaces scratched and worn, empty water containers, their seals broken. A cracked tablet with a black screen, its glass shattered like a spiderweb. A device that had once held answers, now a silent witness to failure. Partly under the body was a metal case, about the size of a hardcover book, its surface undamaged. A heavy-duty waterproof container with latches that gleamed in the light, a promise of preservation amidst the decay. I set my phone down, its light pointing up for brightness, and carefully reached for the case. My movements slow, reverent, as if I were disturbing a sacred site, the body shifting slightly as I pulled. A faint creak of bones that sent a shiver down my spine, a sound of protest from the dead. The latches opened with 2 clicks, a sharp sound in the silence, revealing a thick journal covered in synthetic material and several folded papers with handwritten notes and diagrams, all in Russian, a language I couldn't read, a barrier to the truth I sought. I picked up the journal carefully, its pages dense with Cyrillic writing mixed with technical drawings, each page a window into a mind that had grappled with this world, a mind that had lost the battle. One page showed the blue portal orb, its measurements and notes meticulously detailed, a diagram that mirrored the device I'd used, a confirmation of its purpose, its power. Another had what looked like mapping coordinates or triangulation points, a map to survival or escape that I couldn't decipher, a treasure I couldn't claim. Damn it, I muttered, frustration a bitter taste in my mouth. The answer so close yet so far, a puzzle locked behind a language I didn't speak. Next to where the case had been, something else caught my eye, a wrist device similar to mine but more complex, its band embedded with multiple components, a design that spoke of advanced engineering, a technology that had been here before me, a legacy of failure. I picked it up, its surface cold, dead, but the design was unmistakably from the same source as my own gear, a sibling to the device that had saved my life, a connection that deepened the dread in my gut. On a hunch, I pressed it against my own wrist device, the contact points aligning with a soft click, and to my surprise, a faint glow emanated from both units. A transfer of power that brought my device's battery from red to yellow, a lifeline in the darkness, a spark of hope amidst the despair. I waited until the process completed, then examined the new device, its interface more intricate, more icons on the display, a wealth of information I couldn't yet access. One icon looked like a document with lines of text, a promise of understanding, a key to the journal's secrets. I tapped it, a holographic interface appearing above my wrist, a translation program that scanned the journal page I held up, processing the Cyrillic text, replacing it with English after a few seconds, a miracle of technology that broke the language barrier, a window into the mind of the man who had died here. Day 17. The translation read, "The words of voice from the grave, a scientist's log in a world of nightmares. The atmospheric composition matches initial readings. Oxygen levels at 22.4%, work fine for humans, though the higher nitrogen makes breathing feel a bit different. Water sources we've tested have minerals not found on Earth, but they're safe to drink in small amounts. Scientific observations, detailed notes about this world, a catalog of survival in a place that defied survival, a record of a man who had come here with purpose, with hope, a hope that had been crushed by the reality of this place." I flipped through more pages, translating sections at random, each entry a deeper descent into despair. Day 21. Third encounter with the four-legged predators. They hunt mostly by smell. They don't see well during the day, but they see better than humans in the dark. The branches on their heads soak up the natural glow around them, probably to help them hide. The deerwolves, as I'd named them, a predator I'd underestimated, a threat that had evolved in this glowing forest, a hunter that saw me as prey, a realization that tightened the knot of fear in my chest, a reminder of the danger that lurked beyond the cave's walls. I turned to the journal's first page, seeking the author's identity, the translation appearing with a flicker of the holographic display. Research Journal of Dr. Alexei Knetsev, Project Threshold, Entry 1. Transport worked. The displacement took about 3.2 seconds, shorter than we expected based on our tests. No immediate physical damage except feeling dizzy and sick. The return portal didn't show up when it was supposed to. Following backup plan and setting up camp to wait for another extraction. Alexei hadn't stumbled here by accident. He'd come on purpose, part of a project called Threshold, a mission to explore this world, a mission that had failed him, that had left him to die alone in this cave, a scientist betrayed by the very technology he trusted. I continued scanning, translating key sections, each entry a deeper wound, a catalog of betrayal and loss. Day 24. Still no contact from base. The emergency beacon doesn't show any sign that our messages are getting through. Starting to think the barrier between dimensions blocks normal communication signals. Day 30. Water supply almost gone. Moving northeast toward the bigger river system we saw during first flyovers. The vehicle packs are showing up more often and getting braver. The way they act suggests they now see humans as food. Viral, so that's what they were called. A name that made them no less terrifying. A name that confirmed my fears, that I was not the first human they'd hunted, that others had come before me. Their death's a lesson the Viral had learned, a lesson that made me their next target. The entries grew shorter, more urgent as I moved toward the end of the journal. Alexei's handwriting deteriorating, a reflection of his declining health, his fading hope. Day 42, my 15th day in this cave system. Leg wound looks infected even though I used antiseptics. The Viral are still outside, walking around. They remember, they wait. Day 43, Petrov has a lot to answer for. 17 of us sent through. 15 before me confirmed dead. Julia was the last. She worked with me. He told her the same lies: calibration, equipment testing, 6-day extraction. All made up. I froze at the mention of Petrov, the name a dagger in my chest, a confirmation of the betrayal I'd suspected, a truth that made my blood run cold. Mikhail Petrov, the man who'd hired me, who'd sent me here, had known I wouldn't return, had expected me to die like the others, a sacrifice to his ambition, a pawn in a game of human experimentation, a game that had claimed 17 lives before mine, a number that echoed in my mind, a chorus of the dead demanding justice. I scanned more desperately now, searching for answers, for a way out, for a way to make Petrov pay. Day 44. Translation software finished. Have confirmed 3 potential return points within 50-kilo radius. The thinning between dimensions happens at specific geometric spots. The closest matches described coordinates in Nikolai's theoretical models. Pages filled with calculations and coordinates followed, rough maps sketched from memory. A path to escape that I couldn't fully decipher, but one diagram stood out. A rock formation shaped like a hand reaching upward, a drawing of the portal orb hovering above the middle finger, a beacon of hope in the darkness. The final entry was shakier, the handwriting a scrawl of desperation, a man at the end of his strength, his life. Day 47, fever getting worse. No strength to try northeast passage to the hand, 20 kilometers minimum. Viral Alpha has stayed nearby for 2 days, the biggest one we've seen. It knows I'm here. The others brought it something of mine, smelled it. Their hunting is smarter than I first thought. Found, northeast rock formation. Hand alignment happens during third moon phase. Important, the activator must be at the right height. All previous attempts failed because they activated it at ground level. The doorway opens above. 17 of us. Let one return to tell the truth. That was the last entry. A final plea from a man who had died with the knowledge of how to get home, but without the strength to make the journey. A man whose death was a warning. A legacy I now carried, a responsibility to survive, to return, to expose Petrov's crimes, to give voice to the 17 who had died in this alien hell. I sat back on my heels, letting the journal close in my lap, the weight of Alexei's words a burden I couldn't shake, a truth that burned in my chest, a fire that fueled my resolve. 17 people, 17 human beings sent through the portal for experiments. None had returned. Their deaths a secret buried in this cave. A secret I now held. A secret I owed it to them to reveal. I stood and began gathering anything useful from Alexei's supplies, the advanced wrist device, a small toolkit, signal flares with a weird design, a water purification system better than the tablets in my pack. Each item a tool for survival, a weapon against the Viral, a step toward the hand formation that promised escape. As I worked, I thought about what I'd learned. This wasn't a survival test. It was human experimentation, a cold, calculated sacrifice of lives for Petrov's ambition. An ambition I now understood. An ambition to exploit this world, to harvest its resources, to expand humanity's reach at the cost of humanity itself. The journal went into my backpack along with the other usable equipment, a burden I carried for Alexei, for all of them, a promise to make it back, to expose what Petrov had done, to ensure their deaths were not in vain. I pointed my light toward the back of the cave, the darkness of void that offered safety for the night, a chance for real sleep before the 20-kilometer hike to the hand. A journey through a forest I knew was full of peril, a journey I had to survive. I paused, looking back at Alexei's remains, the skeleton a silent witness to my resolve. A man I couldn't bury, a man whose story I would carry, the best I could do to honor him. Survive, reach the hand, find the portal home, and make sure Mikhail Petrov paid for the 17 lives he'd sacrificed. A debt that demanded justice, a debt I would collect. 5 days of relentless movement through the alien forest drained me, a marathon of survival that pushed me to the edge of endurance, a journey through a landscape that seemed to shift with every step, a world that rejected my presence with a quiet, persistent hostility. My boots squelched with each step, soaked from wading through too many glowing waterways, the blue liquid shimmering with an internal light, its warmth a deceptive comfort that hid the alien minerals I knew lurked within, minerals that my wrist device flagged as potable, but with neurological risks, a warning I couldn't ignore but couldn't heed, dehydration a more immediate threat than the long-term effects of the water. I crouched at the edge of a shallow stream, the water flowing with a slow, deliberate pace, its surface undisturbed by the wind, a mirror that reflected the glowing ferns above, their light casting a surreal glow on my face, a face haggard from days of flight, from lack of sleep, from the constant threat of the peril. "Let's see if you'll kill me," I muttered, hovering the scanner over the stream, the device flashing yellow, not green, a caution that translated into holographic text. Potable, yes. Toxicity, low. Mineral content, high. Warning, neurological effects with extended consumption. I dipped my bottle, the water's metallic tang coating my tongue, a taste like drinking from an old pipe, a bitterness that made me grimace, but I took 4 small gulps, rationing the liquid, knowing it had to last until the next safe source, a necessity in a world where every resource came with a cost. The ground grew steeper as I continued northeast, following Alexei's coordinates, the glowing trees thinning, their massive trunks giving way to hills covered in plants that looked like ferns but moved with a life of their own, curling away as I passed, their movements a silent recoil, a rejection that still unnerved me, a reminder of how alien this world was, how out of place I was in its ecosystem. By noon, I climbed high enough to see farther, the landscape opening into a vista that stole my breath, a sea of glowing green and purple that stretched to the horizon, a beauty that was both mesmerizing and terrifying, a beauty that hid the predators I knew lurked within. Then I spotted it, 10 miles away, sticking up from the trees, a rock formation that looked just like a hand reaching toward the sky, its fingers jagged against the indigo sky, a beacon of hope that matched Alexei's drawing, a confirmation that his notes were true, that escape was possible, that I could return to Earth, to justice, to the life I'd left behind. The hand, I whispered, the words a prayer, a promise, a goal that fueled my aching body, my knees protesting with each step, the alien water leaving a tingling sensation on my tongue, a reminder of the risks I was taking, risks I had no choice but to accept. A growl came from behind me, low and rumbling, a sound I felt more than heard, a vibration that traveled through the ground, through my bones, a warning that stopped me cold. I turned slowly, my movements deliberate, my body tensing as I faced the source. A massive varel, the alpha Alexei had described, at least twice the size of any I'd seen. Its long body balanced on 6 jointed legs, claws digging into the dirt, its antlers branching out like spikes, a crown of darkness that absorbed the light, its black eyes staring right at me, a predator that had found its prey, a hunter that knew my scent despite the cloaking field, a field that flickered, its battery low, its protection failing at the worst possible moment. The creature lowered its head, nostrils flaring, taking a slow step forward, its movements deliberate, a hunter playing with its food, a predator that knew I couldn't escape, that relished the chase, that saw me as a challenge to be broken. I backed away, my eyes locked on its, my heart a drumbeat in my chest, each step a test of will, a refusal to give in to the panic that threatened to overwhelm me. When it closed to within 20 yards, I turned and ran, the forest blurring as I sprinted downhill, jumping over logs, ducking branches, the glowing plants a streak of light in my periphery, the alpha smashing through the trees behind me, its speed unnatural, its size a force of nature, closing the distance with each second, its roar a sound of tearing metal, a promise of death that spurred me faster, my body fueled by adrenaline, by the will to survive, by the promise of the hand, a promise I couldn't let die. My foot caught on a root, a betrayal of the terrain, and I tumbled down a steep slope, covering my head with my arms, the world a chaotic spin of green and purple, my body slamming against a tree with a force that drove the breath from my lungs, pain shooting through my ribs, a sharp agony that made me gasp, a reminder of my fragility in this unforgiving world. The alpha appeared at the top of the slope, its massive form black against the alien sky, its claws pawing the ground once, a deliberate gesture, a declaration of intent, before it began to pick its way down, not rushing now, but moving with a confidence that said I couldn't escape, that my flight was futile, that my story would end here, in the shadow of the hand I'd fought so hard to reach. My wrist device beeped softly, the display flashing red, the cloaking field dead, its battery drained, a final betrayal of the technology that had kept me alive, a technology that had limits I'd pushed beyond. I dug into the backpack, my fingers frantic, grasping disc-shaped objects, sound generators that had appeared during one of the pack's transformations, a last-ditch effort to survive, a trick to buy time. I turned one on and threw it far to my left, the disc bouncing once before emitting a high-pitched noise, barely audible, a distraction that stopped the alpha in its tracks, its head turning toward the sound, its black eyes searching. I activated a second generator and threw it in the opposite direction, the competing noises a confusion that gave me 5 precious seconds, a window to slip behind the tree, my body pressed against the glowing bark, my breath shallow, my movements silent, a survivalist's instinct honed by years in the wild, a skill that had kept me alive against predators on Earth, a skill I now relied on against a predator from another world. The alpha roared, a sound like tearing metal, a fury that echoed through the forest, a realization that I'd slipped its grasp, that I was still a challenge, still a threat, still a prey worth hunting. I didn't look back, my eyes fixed on the hand, its jagged fingers growing larger as I closed the distance, hours running together in a blur of exhaustion and fear. My body a machine pushed to its limits, my mind a steel trap focused on survival, on escape, on justice. I used the remaining sound generators carefully, each one a lifeline, a distraction that bought me minutes, seconds, a chance to keep moving, to keep breathing, to keep fighting. The alpha never quit, its pursuit relentless, its howls a constant threat, a reminder that it was always there, always closing, always hunting, its intelligence a terrifying force, a predator that learned, that adapted, that saw me as a puzzle to solve. As darkness fell, the light shifted from purple to deep indigo, the forest's glow intensifying, a bioluminescence that lit my path, a beauty that masked the danger, a beauty I couldn't afford to admire. The base of the rock formation loomed ahead, its stone fingers rising from the ground like the remnants of a broken statue, a monument to a world I didn't understand, a world that didn't want me, a world I had to escape. Up close, each finger was at least 100 feet tall, their sides steep, their surfaces smooth, offering few handholds, a challenge that tested my resolve, a climb that could mean life or death. Alexei's journal had mentioned the portal opening above, not at the bottom, a detail that meant I had to ascend, to reach the top, to find the doorway home, a doorway the alpha would follow me to, a doorway I had to reach first. The alpha's howl echoed through the forest, closer now, minutes away, its pursuit unyielding, its determination a mirror to my own, a race against a predator that wouldn't stop, that wouldn't rest, that wouldn't let me live. I walked around the formation, searching for the easiest path, the thumb offering more bumps and ledges than the other fingers, a natural route that promised a chance, a hope, a way to the top. I tightened the backpack straps across my shoulders, the weight a comfort, a reminder of the tools that had kept me alive, the journal a burden I carried for Alexei, for the 17, a burden that fueled my climb. I started up, my hands finding holds, my legs pushing me upward, the stone smooth under my fingers, a challenge that tested my skills, a climb that reminded me of every mountain I'd scaled, every cliff I'd conquered, a test I couldn't fail. Not now. Not with the alpha so close. Not with justice so near. 50 feet up, my arms burned, the strain of fire in my muscles, a pain I pushed through, my body a machine fueled by will, by the promise of the top, by the memory of Alexei's words. I stopped on a narrow ledge, pressing my back against the rock to catch my breath, the wind gusting around me, a force that tried to pull me off, a reminder of my vulnerability, a reminder that one mistake could end me. Below, the alpha emerged from the forest, its massive form a shadow against the glowing trees, its black eyes locking onto me, a predator that wouldn't be denied, a hunter that began to climb, its weird limbs finding grip where there seemed to be none, its body moving with an unnatural grace, a speed that defied its size, a speed that closed the distance with every second. I hadn't expected it to climb, a mistake that could cost me everything, a mistake I couldn't afford to make again. I pushed upward with new urgency, ignoring my aching muscles, the ledge narrowing as I climbed, becoming small bumps barely wide enough for my toes, each step a test of balance, of will, of survival, a climb that felt like a race against death itself.